Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 8th of December, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, where's the time going? It's just whistling by, isn't it? We're well into December already. But the weather today, the weather is decidedly grey and gloomy, and that's reports really from across the country. Although somebody is saying that it's surprisingly mild in east central Scotland and the sun is shining. So obviously life north of the border is better than south today. Where should we begin? Fake news.
Yes. There you go.
Well, what better place to go than the Telegraph? And we just thought that this is one of the most emotive, important and disturbing stories that we've seen in some time. The Duchess of Cornwall reveals her grandchildren call her Gaga as she and Prince Charles meet the pop star at the Royal Variety performance. To which we say, who is actually Gaga? Can we believe that it's Prince Charles? Certainly, but apparently it's Camilla.
Well, certainly the grandchildren obviously recognise.
And do we really care the slightest that these people are meeting? Well, of course we do, because the royal family are feeding off money taken from the British public, and apparently we are to pay for their meeting with Lady Gaga. So if you feel concerned about it, simply stop buying the Telegraph and let's put an end to fake news. Bring in the Guardian, because of course we wouldn't like to leave the Guardian out. And here we are. Their big piece is what Madonna thinks about the US election. Well, personally, I don't care about what she thinks about anything, and I wouldn't value her opinion on anything. But the Guardian thinks that we need to know what Madonna thinks about the US election. And of course, it feels like women betrayed us, Mike.
Okay.
Or not.
Okay. I wondered, did she have those thoughts on the operating table or something? I'm not sure. But anyway, look, this story from Mark Carnage, of course, is a few days old, but stick with it because you'll see where I'm going with it in a second. So a few days ago, Mark Carney speaking and talking about the lost decade in Britain, the first lost decade since the 1860s. Over the past decade, real earnings have grown at the slowest rate since the mid-19th century. So he went on. He said it was incredible that real incomes, but of course this is the policy that he and the government have set. So it's hardly incredible. It's hardly surprising to him. This was intentional. And he said on Monday that we meet today during the first lost decade since the 1860s. And so he went on. But then yesterday, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation published this report, Monitoring Poverty and Social Exclusion 2016. And they were apparently finding that 7 million Britons are in poverty despite being from families that are in work. So they're saying more than 7 million people living in poverty, commissioned by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. They said that there were 13.5 million people living in households classified as poor in 2014 and 15, and that's 21% of the UK population. That hasn't changed too much, but nonetheless, it's the fact that people are in working situations rather than on benefits that they are finding particularly concerning. Well, maybe this gives us a clue, because this is a subject that I've been covering for such a long time that it's all the focus is on whether people have jobs or not, and there's no care about what kind of jobs they are, whether they're career jobs, whether they're providing people with a future, whether they're providing people with a realistic income or not. And so this was the Financial Times yesterday or the day before, talking about UK industrial production suffering the biggest drop since 2012. And of course, they begin this, the first word of this article, Brian, is ouch. So they're saying industrial production in the UK suffered its third consecutive monthly drop in October, falling to its worst rate in more than 4 years. Well, it's hardly surprising, because we are decimating manufacturing and high-quality jobs in this country and replacing them with low-quality jobs. So if Mark Carney is talking about a lost decade, if the Joseph Rowntree Foundation are worried about people in poverty even though they're in work, this is all to do with Mark Carney's policies and subsequently government policies. But it's okay. We don't need to worry, because today the government has published the website for the Northern Powerhouse. Now, when George Osborne was the Chancellor for the Exchequer, he was banging on about the Northern Powerhouse for such a long time. It was his sort of main theme over his period of time, but they have just finally published the website. It went online today. So I thought we would have a look at the promotional video for this, which is spectacular. A couple of minutes. Have a look at this. So there you go, Brian. The Northern Powerhouse is great. Sorry for the people that are listening to this rather than watching it. I hope you enjoyed the music. But anyway, what were they saying? £350 billion of GDP out of the Northern Powerhouse. Well, I'm sorry, but 350 billion pounds of GDP out of the Northern Powerhouse has happened in spite of government, not because of it. And what are they saying? 60 billion pounds in goods exported from the Northern Powerhouse. That is a drop in the ocean. It is pathetic. So government pretending that we're going to invest in that, what can you say?
I think the contrast with the Financial Times says it all, because the Financial Times says there's a big problem in manufacturing, and here we've got a very glossy government propaganda video that says, well, the country is working fine. This is the same country, Mike, that we've driven tens of thousands of miles around, I think, to venues. And what do we see? We see utter chaos on the roads. We go into urban centres that are disaster areas. We see row upon row of shops that are empty, closed down, or charity shops. You see the empty spaces that used to be the big bases of manufacturing. It's very easy to see the state of Britain if you travel around it. This has got to be one of the worst propaganda videos I've seen in some time.
Right, so what is it actually about? Well, of course, the clue is in the top right-hand corner there, where it says devolution and local growth. because this is nothing about promoting economy or industry or production or productivity or wealth. This is only about a political agenda, because the economic thing is happening in any case. It's not happening as well as it could do, but it is the political agenda that we need to look at. So this is all about devolution and constitutional reform, breakup of the country. Now, of course, we've been talking about this for quite some time as well, and if you want to know why that's dangerous, it's because what's on offer here is not local decision making. It's not local control. It's centralized control at a local level. We've said this before. It's policy coming from outside the country, and it's a form of participatory democracy where individuals don't get to participate, just the think tanks, the NGOs, the civil society organizations, and other charities. So you'll be pleased to know that Big Society Capital, which of course is at the heart of David Cameron's Big Society. Now, David Cameron, of course, is no longer in politics, but we'll see where he's going in just a second. This Big Society idea is right at the heart of constitutional change in this country. And of course, Big Society is Cameron's rebranding of Tony Blair's Third Way. And at the heart of the Big Society is Big Society Capital. And they have just launched what they're calling it, Kickstarting a New Journey. It's a matched funding program for any charity or civil society organization that wants to run a crowdfunder. They're doing it in partnership between the Big Society Capital and 3 crowdfunding platforms. That's Crowdfunder, Ethex, and ThinCats. And they're going to match any funding that that these charities raise through that. Ben Warren, who's the investment associate at Big Society Capital, said, "We hope this initiative will help charities and social enterprises find routes to investment that could offer better value and engagement from their local communities. We know that donation-based crowdfunding is the fastest growing model of alternative finance in 2015, and we're excited about the potential for this fund to create similar momentum in the social investment sector." So that's what they're up to. Well, let's go and see what David Cameron is up to, because The Independent here highlighting that he is launching a new speaking career after his staff have registered a company. So he has got some staff, and they have registered the Office of David Cameron Limited, and that's The Independent's quoting the Times there. So this is echoing what Tony Blair has done in the past, and Gordon Brown as well. But in this article, it's being presented as though Cameron is feathering his own nest. And of course, that's not what's going on here at all. And what he's doing is raising money for his new role as a champion of the Big Society. The money will go into the Office of David Cameron Limited. Cameron is becoming a mini-me to George Soros. And he will do similar things to the types of things that Tony Blair has done over the last few years. Now that Tony Blair is moving back into mainstream British politics, which we might be talking about a little later, this is, Cameron is there to fill that hole. So I'm just going to highlight a new article on the UK Column website from Martin Edwards as part of the One World Governance series. The Welsh Assembly, a dictatorship masquerading as a democracy. At the heart of the Big Society is this notion of devolution. This is what's at the heart of the Northern Powerhouse as well. And if you want to understand the background to what is going on around all this stuff, then you need to read our One World Governance series of articles, including this one, and also the Common Purpose Effect articles are useful as well. So we need to keep watching, keep an eye.
Certainly do, and of course the message is that Big Society is very much alive and well. This is the new system of government, so government's buried in amongst the charity, the non-government organisations. It's participatory democracy. It's not going to involve individuals. It will be these organisations that are given the supposed right to put across political opinion. All of this has been going on at some speed, and as we move on through the news today, we're going to show you or give you a glimpse into how Theresa May's policy is being put together. So basically, democracy in its best sense, we will say, being dismantled and moved across into this third sector arena, and that is why you're seeing David Cameron, Gordon Brown and Tony Blair doing the business.
Okay, so thanks to Steve for this one. This is quite amazing. £6 million contract is currently in operation in Plymouth from Plymouth City Council in order to provide enforcement services. So they're paying this £6 million to three bailiff contractors, three bailiffs firms. And what the job ad or the contract advertisement says here, the council requires the provision of enforcement agent services for the enforcement of council tax, non-domestic rates, business improvement districts, commercial rent, parking penalty charge notices, housing benefit overpayments, general sundry debts and debt recoveries on behalf of third parties undertaken by the council. So this behalf of third parties is particularly interesting because where a third party is running a car park, for example, the council is therefore reclaiming debts on behalf of that third party. That's completely unlawful. There's no contract between the individual and the contract and the council in that case. It's the individual and the private company. So the council split this into three lots, one for council tax and business rates, one for sundry and housing benefit overpayment debts, and one for and commercial rents, and one for parking services. Now I have to say it's the housing benefit overpayment debts one that really grips me because what do we have here? We have people that are struggling to live in this current economic situation who are on housing benefit. They're getting some kind of income to cover their rent, and if the council makes a mistake and pays them too much, even though they're actually pretty poor and unable to probably pay that back, they've probably spent the money already, they're going to put the bailiffs on them like a bunch of attack dogs. It's a disgrace.
Well, as somebody, sorry to interject, Mike, somebody said in the chat room, it's our own money being used to come back on us.
Yeah,
is what's happening here. So vicious stuff. And of course, Plymouth, in the scale of things, a relatively small city. If Plymouth's spending $6 million on this type of thing, we can be sure that much bigger cities are spending even more.
Absolutely.
So as somebody said, this is devolution is the creation of this extremely aggressive form of local government backed up by thugs.
That's
it. There.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Plymouth can bring in the bailiffs with £6 million, but Plymouth MP is not getting very excited. We're just watching more of the Royal Navy sent to the scrapyard. So thank you very much to our viewer that sent us in this. It was picking up that there'd been a debate in Parliament here, and we've got Lord West of Spithead saying that I understand it's planned that RFA Argus will be paid off. We don't have any form of replacement for this ship. So it's an important ship acting as a casualty receiving station, but it also can do very basic air training operations for helicopters. So it's a useful support ship. And of course, what we're learning again is this ship is going to be scrapped with no replacement. So this is Theresa May and Mr. Fallon continuing Cameron's agenda, which is to cut the military, particularly the Royal Navy, so that we are left begging to be part of the European military machine, which we're now seeing form very quickly. And of course, with the EU military machine comes the procurement system, billions and billions of pounds worth of defence procurement, and that requires the EU Treasury. So the absolute lie from Theresa May and her government at the moment is that there is Brexit, there's no such thing, and we are watching Britain's military subsumed into the EU. Well, if that's happening, what better person than Major General McGowan, Royal Marines? We've been watching this man for some time. His Twitter page is the page to go. This man is a one-man propaganda machine for the EU. We're told that military officers should not be political. However, this man is in full colour promoting everything to do with the European Union. We did a little bit of analysis. So out of 58 tweets, 16 of them were promoting the EU NAV force. So this is blatant EU political propaganda. He's got a couple of tweets for the US Marine Corps. He's got one on that should be Royals. There's one on the Royal Marine. He's got a couple on three on the Royal Marine Band and a few on core values. in the Royal Marines. So we don't see anything about this man campaigning for the release of Al Blackman. What we see is him promoting the political superstate, which is the European Union. And it's taken the Mail to pick up, of course, on what many would regard as the treasonous MPs who voted against any form of Brexit. I had to choose the photograph of Nick Clegg here from this article because I found the banner there, Open, Tolerant and United, so sickening, so full of hypocrisy. Here is the man who has done absolutely nothing to help counter child abuse or even sexual abuse in his party. But of course, he's one of the men promoting the European Union. But why wouldn't he? Because, of course, he was one of Leon Britton's EU political boys. So we couldn't put it straighter than that, really.
Well, one thing I would say is that the Tory whips clearly had their whips out yesterday because only one Tory MP voted against the motion.
Right.
Kenneth Clarke.
Indeed.
Yes.
Kenneth Clarke, an MP who could actually do a lot to help Melanie Shaw, who's currently in prison. But Ken Clarke seems very, very reluctant to get involved in anything to do with the child abuse around Beechwood Children's Home, or indeed the other children's homes, which have never been investigated under Nottinghamshire Constabulary Operation OR. I don't know why that would be, but it appears that these MPs are simply reluctant to get involved.
Well, we've just mentioned the Daily Mail. Let's mention them again. I regret to say that I'm afraid, I hate to do it, but I have to agree with Dominic Grieve here. I really hate to agree with him on anything. But he's saying Theresa May must disassociate herself from the vitriolic abuse of the judiciary by the Daily Mail. I'm afraid I have to say that everybody has to disassociate themselves with that because it is pretty unpleasant, in my opinion. It goes beyond simple criticism. There's plenty of evidence for there being, an argument for some of these judges in the Supreme Court to recuse themselves from this case. But that doesn't justify the type of rhetoric that's been pushed out on this issue. So that's all I really wanted to say. I don't know if you've got a view on that one.
Well, we know this is a very delicate area. I think we have said, and we've said on many occasions, that it is wrong to brand a single organisation or a single group of people as being bad. It simply does not work. We know that even within the BBC, there are journalists who are aware of what's going on, but of course they can't speak out because they lose their jobs, or they're going to be sat on by the editorial board. So police the same, judges are the same. We need to be accurate in what we're saying about who is doing what and who the real wrongdoers are.
But in the meantime, Brian, from the beginning, we said that what would happen following the vote, if the vote had gone the way that we hoped, that there would be a period of simple chaos, argument, and that's exactly what's going on. So Independent here, who have absolutely coming out on the Remain side and propagandizing for it, as far as I can see. But Theresa May won't be getting a red, white and blue Brexit. The EU is firmly in control. And what are they talking about? They're saying that the subheading is the UK misreads the EU mood. It will not be able to work around the European Commission and do side deals with some EU prime ministers. With a crisis in Italy and others looming, Brexit may not be the top of the leaders' agenda. And of course, why should it be? Because we've gone cap in hand to them and said, please let us leave. This is not the approach that should have been taken. This business in the Supreme Court at the moment was engineered by Theresa May as a delaying tactic. If the government wins the appeal in the Supreme Court, it's very likely that it'll be taken to the European Court of Justice. So then it'll go into that legal system for a long time. More delaying tactics. The European Union and the European Commission are in a very strong position to simply delay Brexit. And of course, that's the intention, because while all this delay, obfuscation and argument is going on, institutions like the EU military union, are merging into the European police forces. These agenda items continue in the background. As I say, this is the Independent again. EU judges decide on UK cases. for years after Brexit. So this is even if they do invoke Article 50, even if we do get through 2 years of negotiation, even if we do get ratification of that negotiation in Parliament, they're still going to fight in the courts over it for years and years and years. And of course, in the meantime, the Great Repeal Bill simply merges current EU legislation and turns it into what they're describing as UK domestic legislation. So we are absolutely at the end of it in exactly the same position we're in today.
Yeah, and I think we have to say that the UK column warned about this many, many months ago, that the thing was going to be a complete fabrication.
Yeah.
And that is what we're seeing. Well, an interesting report, also the Mail here, but this one is really worth having a read. We've taken some quotes out of it. What they're talking about is the fact that the BBC in particular has turned on anybody who's dared to vote for Brexit, and they're labelling people. So this is part of the quote. But make no mistake, populism is now being used as a sneering, pejorative term to describe the extraordinary social phenomena sweeping both Europe and the US as millions and millions of people express their anger at the ballot box over the indolence, corruption and complacency of their nation's political elite. Now, that's a pretty hard-hitting statement, Mike, and I think we can say perhaps the author actually believed that when he was talking about corruption in the elite, that was true. We know, of course, that the underlying agenda is to break down Britain as a nation state. So, of course, in pointing a stick at these people and calling them corrupt and criminals, which is the truth, the real agenda is to reduce this country to chaos. So we have to keep an eye on who is saying what and why. But let's continue and have a look at this bit here. This is why it is so insidious when politicians and media outlets such as the BBC use the word populist with such abandon to smear views with which they disagree. It is a play on language that repeatedly suggests it is the people rather than the political establishment who are wrong. So there's some pretty hot stuff in this article. You'll easily find it if you go looking for it. But fascinating to read somebody who's prepared to write there that we're now being governed by a sneering, corrupt, criminal elite. Truth coming to the surface. Well,
I was just going to say, when you listen to the BBC on the television or on the radio, it's absolutely clear that they actually do believe that everybody else is wrong. That
yes.
This isn't. They're not just presenting a sort of face. I think they
believe it.
They believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is because we're dealing with a BBC that's reframed in its widest sense.
Yeah.
So let's take another jump into Alice in Wonderland, and we better bring on this man, Tony Blair, because he's absolutely on the bandwagon. So when we're talking about the subject of populism or populist people, Tony Blair's so concerned about them that he's decided to set up the New Institute. Now, you mentioned this earlier in the week, Mike, but let's force this home specifically to counter the explosion in populist movements across Europe. So you can't be an ordinary person with an opinion which disagrees with Tony Blair or the BBC, because if you are, you're some sort of extreme right-wing movement. And here's the Telegraph. Tony Blair sets up New Institute to tackle Brexit populism. That was the picture they had of him. But what I picked up is this little headline here: Blair concerned at the future of globalism. Well, I don't think that was the true statement. The reality is that Blair is concerned for the future of globalism because, of course, people are beginning to see that the political agenda being unleashed in UK is part of this drive for the rules-based
international order.
Thank you, international order, the New World Order, as we've heard Gordon Brown, for example, call it. So Tony Blair getting very hot under the collar that these nasty, nasty populist people, extremists is what he's really saying, dare to disagree with him. Well, let's have a look at the real Tony Blair. Look away if you're of a weak disposition, because this is pretty offensive. But here we are. So unveiling the new Tony Blair Institute. Mr. Blair said, in the past 6 months, we've seen political earthquakes in the UK and Brexit and in the American election, as well as an explosion in populist movements all over the European continent. This impacts profoundly all of the work we do and the future of globalism. So he's a worried man. Let's have a look at how he presents himself on his website. Well, here we are, the office of Tony Blair. Trying to mimic the President of the United States, maybe. A lot of pink there. I'm not sure what that's to do with. What have we got here? Well, speaking at the No Labels conference in Washington, D.C., Tony Blair has said that to confront the anger, the centre must be strong and muscular and provide answers. So anybody who dares to say they disagree with Tony Blair's policies, an angry, extreme movement populist. And he's got a message, a welcome. Globalization brings each of us closer together, apparently, Mike.
Excellent.
And it presents new challenges and opportunities that we've never encountered before. Understanding this new future is key to our collective destiny, whether in the Middle East, on faith, Africa, climate change, or sport. My focus is on devising long-term solutions to some of the world's most significant problems. This website is where you can come to find out more. Please bite the time. So Tony Blair putting himself forward because he is there as the saviour of the world.
What has it interests me.
I'm smiling at this point because I don't know what else to do.
Well, look, what I was going to say is, you listened to Mark Carney's speech from earlier in the week. You listened to some of the things Theresa May said at the City of London speech, the Mansion House speech she gave earlier during November, and it's all the same thing. Globalization is at risk of failing. People are being left behind. We've got to bring people in, and the message isn't in their own minds. The message that they're telling each other is not that people are rejecting everything that these people stand for. They can't imagine this scenario that people are rejecting everything that Tony Blair stands for. It's only that they haven't thrown enough of the scraps.
Don't understand
at the dogs. No, they consider the people that are so-called populists. They consider that they've been left behind in some way. They haven't been bribed quite enough. We need to throw some more scraps at them, and they'll come back on board. This is the message that they're sending. They cannot imagine that we're rejecting everything that they stand for.
Yeah.
And that's why they're going to lose their way in the end, because if they can't comprehend that, they're not going to come up with a solution that works for anybody.
Thank goodness.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so Tony Blair, and of course Tony Blair hasn't disappeared from British politics. He's now very much in the background, as Mike said, so he's helping to work the big society agenda. That'll be with the full support of George Soros, Open Society, and the rest of that. But we better take a little look into the cabinet. Now let's bring back in Mr. Letwin. This was Mike's slide of a few months ago when it appeared that Oliver Letwin had been dispatched by Theresa May. And so the original headline was, in fact, from the UK column was bye-bye. But it's bye-bye, but not gone, because we've been getting some very interesting information that at one point it appeared that nobody was really running Tory policy. It was like a vacuum and nobody could really pin down where Mr. Letwin was. But we now understand he's very much there in the wings. He's still very much one of the major controlling forces, ex-NM Rothschild man. And of course, he put his name to the book on privatising the world, as you would. But here's the new man who is now fully in the limelight. His name's George Freeman. Not many good pictures of him, actually, so he's a little bit grey there. But he's got the new role as chair of the Prime Minister's Policy Board. And what sort of thing can we expect from him? Well, this is part of his tweets. He's very big on the NHS. We'll come on to that. And here he's tweeted out a bit of history. NHS England has established 13 genomic medicine centres to deliver an end-to-end genomic medicine pathway. Do you get a warm feeling for that, Mike?
No.
No, right, okay. And then I thought that you might like this one because post-Brexit, he says, we'll need a more global Britain with stronger shared commitment to global trade and a global role. And there's 3 pillars: trade, aid and security. So we can't run the country, we can't run the roads, we can't run the schools or the military, but Tory policy is now about helping to run the world.
Yes.
So I'm not quite sure how well that would be. Remember that Letwin is lurking there in the shadows, and this gentleman is apparently called High Tech Hezza because he's moved into the old office of Mr. Heseltine, arch Tory. So who is this man? We'll just interject with where some of this aid money is going, and then we'll have a look at Tory policy.
Do we know if this policy board is operating within the Cabinet Office?
More work to be done on that, actually,
Right.
but we've had some pointers from some very interesting individuals saying time for UK column to look at how the Tory party forms policy. So that's what we're going to do.
Okay, well, aid absolutely at one of the legs of the three-legged stool there. And the Times reporting how consultants are taking billions from the foreign aid budget. They're saying that overcharging is rife. And Priti Patel is promising to review all the contracts. I'll believe that when I see it. She's reviewing all foreign aid contracts after an unprecedented analysis of more than 70,000 financial transactions revealed that consultancy spending had doubled to £1 billion a year since 2012. 10 British companies received almost half the funds. And one British think tank quoted £10,306 to write a single blog post. Wish I could get that. And another received £23,000 in taxpayers' money to write a 2-page policy brief. This is good business if you can get it. Brian, half an hour's work and 10 grand. That's not bad.
It's about equivalent for the bailiffs, I would think.
Well, indeed. Now, Priti Patel's busy as well because not just with this article, but she's also attacking the Commonwealth and Baroness Scotland. And she's concerned about how the Commonwealth is spending money. She's also attacking UNESCO because of how they're spending money. So Baroness Scotland, well, she's in trouble because over the last few weeks, so-called explosive documents have shown that she spent £330,000 renovating her flat in Mayfair of taxpayers' money, as you do.
As you do.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she was trying to defend that. Now, the Commonwealth Secretariat, it gets £15 million a year. And Priti Patel is saying they're going to get that cut unless they start doing things better. UNESCO gets £4.5 billion a year of taxpayers' money, 38 international institutions that goes through. And so not just the think tanks, but also the Commonwealth and UNESCO are under review at the moment.
Okay, just before I bring the next slide up, I just need to do a very quick correction here, and we'll do it live because it makes the news more fun. Well, let's come back to Mr. Freeman. This is one of the things he's been saying. Over the next few months, I'll be working with the Prime Minister and her team, helping set out a programme, set out key areas of the new government programme on the deep economic and social reforms we need to make the economy work for everyone in our society. So if you really read that statement, society is going to be changed to make sure we fit the economic model that they want. So this is about more shelf stackers, more coffee servers. It's certainly not going to be about real skills training and apprenticeships and real jobs and manufacturing. But the Tory party here, remember the 3 pillars. We're going to change the world and we're going to change British society to help the Tories' economic model, a model which the Financial Times is saying is falling into complete chaos. System working. Well, here he is, reported in a local paper, the Eastern Daily Press, and he says there's no reason why our health records should not be put online. Apparently, the availability of integrated data on health and care interventions across the NHS and care sector is key to our being able to deliver 3 vital developments in modern medicine. And he complains that hospital records are very fragmented. There's almost no proper integration of patient records with the social care system. So here's more of the big society. NHS falling apart as we speak, massive privatisation. But this man's confident he can run Theresa May's Conservative policy to change the world, and also he's going to bring in the NHS, which will work in the future. Let's have another look at him here, because here he's in a studious pose in The Independent, and they say that he's just the man for the matter of life and death. And what's being discussed is that new drugs, devices and diagnostics will come from a mix of specialist charities, small biomedical startups and spin-outs, patients' advocacy groups and charitable foundations like those run by Bill Gates.
This is the big society.
This is big society. This is public sector, civil service destroyed. Everything now is a mixy blob of private companies, charities and NGOs. I'll just take a couple out of this text here, but you can see it on screen if you freeze it at some stage. It says, we're just over 9 months till the election. If you strip out recess, I've told the teams we've only a few months to show the importance of this agenda in areas like genomics, early access to medicines and the power of personalised healthcare. And then he says we've got to look at the future of big pharma. We've got to look at the biomedical industry and cutting edge devices, diagnostics and treatments. So he's very big on NHS, but don't worry, his policy team has got that under control. He's very big on the automotive industry, and he's tweeted out here, there's a huge opportunity for the UK to lead the world in 21st century automotive technology. Do we actually have any British car manufacturers, Mike?
No.
No.
But what we are good at is inventing things and then giving the technology away to all and sundry for a song.
Right. So the UK is going to lead the world in automotive, but we don't actually manufacture any cars ourselves. I don't know whether Mr. Freeman knows this. Perhaps somebody could email him and just point out to him that the Tories and Labour have got rid of our car manufacturing industry. What are we up against? Well, we'll come to a close today. We put this out a little while ago. These were the faces of Britain's politicians as David Cameron snickered and sneered as he departed Parliament, celebrating what? We don't know. What have they done? Well, aside from destroying this country, of course, many countries across the world have been destroyed. Arrogant, vile individuals. We did a little tweet to say how smug and arrogant they were. But let us remind ourselves that this man is still working at the heart of the Tory party machinery within big society, and he is only interested in creating the party. If we truly want to dominate the political landscape and be the party we could be, the party that we dream of. This is reminiscent of the Third Reich, Mike.
Yes.
Very dangerous people. Well, that's it. What can we do? We have to continue exposing, speaking out and challenging these people at every single opportunity. So if you're thinking to yourself, what can I do? Everything you do is important, even if it's sending your local MP a challenging email every week. Do it and encourage other people to do something. Sitting and doing nothing is not an option. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us. And can I say that we need people to take out donations with UK Column. We need your financial support. If you're not a subscriber, please consider taking one out. And of course, we're very grateful for any donations. And I will also add that Ian Crane has been doing a lot of exceptionally good work over the last year. That's involved a huge amount of travel, which has cost him, of course. And if there's anybody out there that would like to donate to Ian Crane, we're happy to take donations for him. But of course, if you look at the excellent work he's done on fracking, he needs your support to continue going. That's it. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.